What's up guys? In today's video I'm going to show you how to convert a single surface mounted light fixture to recessed lighting. So stick around and I'll walk you through the process. Okay, brief overview of the project. As you can see, I got a center mounted light fixture now. This is my laundry room. It's approximately 10 by 6. There used to be a closet over in this section here. I've since ripped the wall down. There used to be a header up above, all gone. Light fixture used to be centered in the room from that wall to this wall. No longer is. There's going to be a bank of cabinets going on over here, and I've never really cared for the look of this light to begin with. I always like the look of recessed lighting better. Okay, so first thing you want to determine is if this project is even feasible, and there's a couple things you have to check. First is your joist locations. You can see these screw patterns on this new piece of drywall I installed, and incidentally I shouldn't have installed this yet. I came up with the idea to install these lights after I reinstalled the drywall in this section. However, that's going to be very easy to remove. I'll take that down and I can have access to the ceiling. So you can see where the joists are. Each one of these line of screws is representing where one is, and ideally what you want to do is center your lights in these bays. Alright, so you can kind of make out right here, that's where a future location of a light's going to be. There's going to be a light over here, again in between two of these, and then you just follow those right along, and same thing, there's going to be one here and one over here. Alright, so obviously getting from this light to this light is going to be a simple task. Okay, you're in the same joist bay, meaning this screw line and this screw line, that's all empty up in there. We can get the wire from here over to here, no problem. The problem you run into when you're installing lights is when you have to cross over joist bays. So to get from this light over to this light, obviously we have one and two joists in the way. Now, in my case, when I remove this piece of drywall, I'm going to be able to get it up in there and drill a hole through this one, and I can get the wire easily across. Okay, so more than likely you're not going to have a section of drywall this size that you're going to be cutting out. What I recommend you do is, if you're going to be jumping from this location over to here, I would come back to your ceiling in the corner and I'd cut an access panel right along here, probably about 3 inches wide, and I'd break out this section of drywall here. I then drill my holes through all my joists that I needed to run from one end to the other, run my wire through, and then patch up this section here. It's a lot easier to patch up drywall, in my opinion, in a corner like this than in an open area in the middle of the ceiling like this. You'll hide your repair much better in a corner here. So look to do that. So that's your first obstacle, the joists up in the ceiling. Your second obstacle is how to get the power to the lights. Now, in my case, come right down the wall here. This switch over here supplies power to the light up above. So without cutting the wall open, I know more than likely that the wiring probably comes into this box either from up above or down below. In my case, it comes from down below, the basement, up into this switch, and then from the switch it goes up the wall, through the top plate on the top of the wall, through the joists, and over to the junction box for this light. Most newer homes, I'd say within the last 20 years, are wired like that. The power from the source comes to the switch, from the switch goes out to your device, in our case a light. In older homes, in an effort to conserve wiring, what they used to do was run your source to the light location, and from the light location they'd run one piece of Romex down the wall to the switch, and they'd use the white and the black as switched legs, basically hot coming into the switch, and then they'd usually use the white coming out of the switch back up to the light fixture to switch it on and off. Alright, if that's the case, more than likely you're going to be dealing with two separate pieces of wire coming to this current location, and it might be a little more difficult for you to find a starting point for your first recessed light. Okay, now in my case, like I said, I have the power coming from the source to the switch and from the switch up to the light. I could take this light down, I can remove this junction box and patch the ceiling. And like I said, my first light location is right here. I'll be able to take the wire out of this existing junction box and pull it back to this location and splice it into my light. This will be my starting point. I will then jump from this fixture to this fixture. Again, we're going to be taking this piece of drywall down. We're then going to drill through this joist and this joist, run from this light through those holes over to this fixture, and then we have smooth sailing from here. This fixture, this is an open joist bay, over to this location. This will be the last light on the run. Okay? So really what you have to determine is if you can get power from the existing spot to your first fixture on your new circuit. Figure it's a good time now to touch on the junction box that's on here and the wiring that's required for the lights. Before you even consider doing this project, hopefully you have a little bit of electrical theory under your belt, and how to work with it safely, and just a general knowledge of it go a long way to making this project successful and safe. Okay, if you're a little hesitant with electric, this probably isn't the job for you. You might want to call an electrician. Alright, we have a white neutral, we have a black hot, and we have a green ground. They come with these pre-installed connectors on them. These are really nice. They eliminate the need for wire nuts. You basically just strip your Romex back and you insert it into these holes in here, and there's basically a tab in there that expands. It grips the copper and holds it in place. Makes for a nice, clean, easy connection. Alright? Up here, you got a knockout for a Romex connector. You can use that, or if you use an NM cable like Romex, like I've been saying, you can pop these out, and basically what this is, you don't need a Romex connector. The wire just gets held in place here without any additional connectors needed. Alright, and then this box basically just snaps shut, obviously, when the wires are all in the box. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the wire we're going to be using. This is 14-2 Romex. Alright, 14 gauge, 2 conductor. I have a 15 amp circuit in this room, so 15 amp calls for a 14 gauge wire. You can use 12 gauge wire on a 15 amp circuit, but 14 is a lot easier to work with. Incidentally, if you're working with a 20 amp circuit, you must use 12 gauge wire. It's very important for the safety of the wiring in your house that you match the wire gauge up to the breaker size in your panel. Okay, can't stress that enough. It's very important. Okay, one additional item of note you're going to want to check is the amperage capacity of the circuit you're going to be tapping into. Now, the light we're removing currently has CFLs installed, but at one point had two 60 watt bulbs for a total of 120 watts. We're going to be installing 4 new recessed light fixtures that could have 50 watt bulbs installed, so that's a total of 200 watts, an 80 watt increase. Now, I know that 15 amp circuit I'm working on is only supplying power to that one junction box, which is the existing light, and there's also an exterior light next to the door. I have plenty of capacity for that extra 80 watts. You're going to want to check in your case that you have that extra capacity as well. Again, if any of this seems over your head, it might be best to hire an electrician to have them complete this job for you. Alright, so having said all that now, I think our next step is we can start doing some work in here. First step, whenever you're working with electric, shut the circuit off. Alright? So we got to kill power to this switch box here. That should kill power to our light, and we'll then be able to go to work taking this fixture down, getting access to the junction box and seeing what we have up there. Alright? Once we do that, we can start cutting our holes. I'm going to be using just a keyhole saw here, a drywall saw. I'm going to use the template that comes with the lights as a template for our saw. $10, you can go pick one of these up in Home Depot. I recommend you use this. A lot easier, it'd save you some time also. Okay, so I went ahead and got the light fixture removed. We're looking at the box here now. It is what I expected. We just have one piece of Romex coming into here with our hot and our neutral, which was the power feed from the switch. I don't know if I was too clear on this before, but doing this the way I described earlier, we don't have to cut this wall open here. Okay, everything basically in the switch box, the wall and up to this point remains untouched. We're just going to be relocating this piece of Romex in this box right now over to our new light location. Alright, next step, we're going to remove the box out of the ceiling to get access to the Romex underneath the drywall. More than likely this is going to be, the Romex is going to be secured probably to a joist over here somewhere, so we got to get up in there, pull that staple out and see how we're going to remove it and get it to this point. There is no real trick to getting the box out of here without destroying the drywall. What I'm going to try to do is just get on here with a pair of pliers, pull this thing down and see if I can break it off wherever it's connected up there. Alright, getting there. I can get up in here now and take a look, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the Romex out of the box and get it out of the way. Alright, so there's your box that I just took out. It's just a standard junction box with the 2 nails in it. Sometimes these have like an L bracket on it and it's secured on the bottom side of the joist. So in other words, instead of it being nailed into the side up here, it'd be secured underneath. It kind of wraps around the bottom of it. So you never know what you have until you start digging in. And as you can see, we did a little bit of damage up there, but that's all going to be patched up anyway in a layer of joint compound, so no big deal. Okay, so we're looking up in the ceiling now, and there is that staple that I was talking about that we have to remove in order to get this wire pulled back to our new spot over here. Alright, little trick with this. You get under it with just a pair of wire cutters on the actual staple. Alright, so grab it on the staple, make sure you're not touching the wire. Then use your wire strippers as like a pry bar against the joist, and you can pull that staple right out of the wood there without damaging the wire. Okay, so there you go. I got that out again just by prying it like that. It comes right out. Grab it right on the end there. I couldn't get the camera up there in a good shot. My hand was kind of blocking it. So this wire's all loose now. So we should be able to cut our hole over here now. We should see this wire coming through that joist that's right around here, and we can pull it down and get started. Alright, so here's your template that comes with your new hi-hats. I'm going to put this up there. I got my crosshairs here that I put on the ceiling that represents my measurement from my 2 walls. Got a little hole in the middle here. You're just going to line that up right on the center of your crosshairs and just trace this onto the ceiling. Good enough. I'm not an artist, but that'll do the job. Just going to use my drywall saw here that I talked about earlier. One thing of note with this, you don't want to be sticking this entire blade up into the ceiling when you're doing your cut. You never know what's up here, wires, pipes, or anything else that you don't want to cut through with this, okay? You want to be using just the upper end of this when you're cutting blind. Alright, so just get your starting point, kind of jam it up in there with your hand, and then just, you know, cut nice and slow. It's not a race. Try to follow your line. Okay, so now with any bit of luck, I should be able to find this wire up in here that's running from the switch. Alright, and there we go. Alright, so that's what we have now. We got our feed wire coming from our switch in our first hi-hat location. What I'm going to go ahead and do now off camera is I'm going to finish cutting all these other holes open, the other 3, and we'll be able to start running our wire. Okay, so I got all 4 holes cut out. We're all set to go here now to start our wiring. Little tip, this is the waste piece that gets cut out when you're cutting the holes. You want to save one of these because when you go to do your drywall repair later to close up the existing hole, you could screw a piece of wood up in here and then screw this right into it, and it just gives you a nice base to tape and mud this hole back up. Alright, I always like saving these. I save a lot of junk. My wife gets mad at me, but these are really good for, you know, in the future if you have to cut holes in the ceilings or the walls or whatnot. These always come in handy. You can cut these down to a square. You can fit them in places. save you from buying a piece of drywall if you don't have any scraps laying around your house. Okay guys, so off camera I went ahead and pulled down this piece of drywall that I was talking about earlier, and again the reason for doing this is because we have to get from this location to this location over there, which means we have to drill through this joist and this joist to do that. Now, like I said earlier, you're not always going to obviously have access to the ceiling like I do in this room. You're just going to have to find a way to get through those two joists. You might have to cut an access hole in the drywall to drill through both of these and just patch them up later with those discs that I saved from the lights. You can sometimes get a long drill bit, and let's say you want to drill through the joist right here. You can see it coming through. You could drill right through the drywall with that long bit and get up through the joist to the other side, but like I've been saying, the only problem with that is you're drilling blind in most cases on the other side. You don't know what's mounted on the back side of the joist when you're doing that. You don't want to drill through a pipe or a wire, and as you can see here I have a heating pipe running right here, which is why I had to tuck this light in between the joist and that pipe in this spot. Okay, so you never know what's lurking up there. Just be careful when you're drilling like that. Always best just to cut a little hole, get up there with the flashlight, take a peek what you're dealing with. Alright, so there it is. I got two 5/8 inch holes. That's just a bit that I had laying around. You could probably use a 1/2 inch. Be more than enough. You want to drill roughly in the middle of your joist, as you can see here. This one I'm a little on the higher side because I want to make sure the wire when I bring it up there isn't anywhere near this pipe. Okay, so we can go ahead and snake our wire now to all of our light locations. So all the wiring has been pulled into place, as you can see, and as usual with any type of project that you're doing in your house, I ran into a problem up here. For some reason, the builder put a piece of cross bracing, a solid piece of wood, in between these two joists, right in the middle here in this bay, but oddly enough not in this bay. So I don't know why. Had to be some type of reason. But I couldn't get the wire from here to here without drilling that. And I used that technique that I described earlier. I took my drill, I drove it in on an angle through the drywall there. I made a little oval shaped access hole with the bit, and I was able to drill through that, and then I was able to push my wire from this through that hole down to here. Now, just of note, as I've been saying and stressing to you guys, make sure you look up through there, check this side of that piece of cross bracing, and get a flashlight up in there and look at this side also. You want to make sure there's no wires and no pipes before you start drilling through that. So these are what I like to use for making the connection into the box. If you remember back in the beginning, I showed you that you had these here you can pass the Romex through, and you also have the knockouts on the sides. Whenever possible, I always prefer to use the knockouts. They're just a lot better means of connecting than these. Alright? Also, when you go and install this up into the ceiling, it's mounted up in there like this. These come out the bottom, so basically what's going to be happening if you use those is the Romex is going to come out. Don't forget your drywall is somewhere around here. They're going to be coming out and they're going to have like a real tight bend to get up back into the joist bay. I just prefer using the ones on the side because the cable is basically oriented in the direction it needs to go to the next fixture. So the choice is yours. I use those, and I use the plastic push-in Romex connectors that you see here. Okay, these are a lot easier to use. You don't have screws that you have to tighten. You don't have that lock nut that you have to put on. It's real simple. You just bust out the knockout on the junction box, push this in, you're good to go. You got to use one of these for each piece of Romex you have going into the junction box. I'm not entirely sure if these are rated for 2 pieces of Romex, but this whole package of, I think there's 10 in here, costs like $1, so you're better off just using one each for each wire. Alright, so box just opens up. So you got the knockout here. Take your screwdriver, pry that back and forth, and it pops right out. What you're going to go ahead and do now is you just take the connector and push it into place. This can be a little tricky sometimes, but you work at it, you should be able to get it in. You can tap it in there with your screwdriver and you'll be good to go. It's in there nice and tight. Now you want to make sure you put these from the outside of the box in, and then you'll be pushing your Romex through those little tabs in there, and that's what grips it. It'll prevent the Romex from being ripped back out of the box. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and bust this knockout out. Real quickly here, this knockout accommodates two different size Romex connectors, so you want to make sure you're breaking out the middle of this. Be careful, because very easily you could be damaging this outer ring on here, which is for a 3/4 knockout Romex connector. Okay, so we're going to pry that out and we'll put the connector in there and we can start wiring. Okay, so there you go, both installed. And we'll get up there now and we will put these two pieces of wire into the box. Alright, I'm only going to show you one of these how to wire it because it gets pretty repetitive and they're all the same. This is a midstream fixture, obviously, so we have a wire providing power to this light, and then there's a wire going out feeding the next light on the circuit. So you'll have this on 3 of the lights in this room I'm working on. The last one will only have one piece coming in feeding the light, and that's it. Nothing changes from that fixture to the other ones. They're all wired exactly the same how I'm going to show you right now. Alright, so we have our 2 pieces of wire here. You're going to take your wire and you're going to insert it through these connectors we just put in here. And you're going to go ahead and pull that through. One item of note when you're doing this, you want to make sure you don't start skinning the outer jacket on the edges of the junction box. They're kind of sharp and it can happen pretty easily. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and push the other one through. Alright, just like that. You probably don't need this much wire sticking through the box. Kind of working on a weird angle here to try to not block the camera. But you only maybe need, the rule of thumb when you're working with wire in a box is you take your fingers like this and you kind of stick it where the connector is on the back side, and where your thumb hits the wire, that's where you cut it back. Okay, so go ahead and just cut these down here. Yeah, that's pretty good like that. Okay, now in terms of stripping these, people make this more difficult than it has to be. They sell all sorts of funky wire strippers for peeling back the insulation here. You don't need it. All you need is just a sharp utility knife. What you're going to go ahead and do is just slice the lower inch or 2 of the outer jacket. Again, it really helps if you have a sharp knife for this. It makes it so much easier. And when you go ahead and do that, it puts a little slit on the jacket, the outer insulation, and then you can just take it and peel it back like a banana to the Romex connector in the box. Okay, you want to peel all this back to that connector. You don't want any of this outer insulation inside the box because it just takes up too much space when you're trying to do the connections in here. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on this one now. I'm going to peel it back right to the connector. Cut that flush right there. Make sure you don't nick the actual conductors. Okay, once you get that all peeled back, they have this paper that's wrapped around the ground and the conductors. You can go ahead and rip that off as well. Okay, and that should be what you're left with coming into the box. We have 2 wires, or 2 separate pieces of Romex that each contain a black, a white, and a bare ground. Okay, so our hot, our neutral, and our ground conductor. Okay, I'm actually going to go ahead and snip these back just a little bit more because we don't need that much to make this connection. In terms of stripping the wire off, we're going to be using these push connectors that come with the light fixture. They require about 3/4 of an inch of the insulation to be stripped off the individual conductors. So you want to go ahead and do that. You don't want to take too much off because when you go ahead and push the wire into this connector, you don't want any bare copper sticking out the bottom of this. You want everything to be concealed that's bare inside this plastic piece of this connector. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and strip all the wires in this right now, so that's done. Again, about 3/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch to 3/4, somewhere in that neighborhood you want to have. Okay? And all it's a matter of doing, each one of these plastic connectors has 4 spots to insert cable into it. One of them is already used for the wire going down to the actual can, and then you have 3 spare slots. So it's basically just matching up your colors now. You want to take your white, insert your white feed coming in, you take your white supply, or your white feed going out to your next light, and insert that into the other slot in that connector. Order does not matter on here. You can put them in any order you want. It'll work. You can do the same thing for your black cables. Now, with electrical wiring, workmanship is everything also, besides safety. You want everything to look neat in here. You don't want all these wires crossing over each other and a big knot of cables in here. You want to keep everything separate. As you're doing it, keep an eye on that. You can see here I got my black coming out. It's not wrapping around any of these other neutrals inside the box here. Keep it nice and clean. That way if you ever have to service this, it'll make it easier down the road. Same thing, I'm going to insert the black and my other black. And that's it, the hots are done. Last is our ground, same procedure. Got your green ground coming in from the can, we're going to keep that. I'm going to insert one of our bare grounds and the other ground. And just give all the wires a tug after you push them in there, make sure they don't pull right back out. That knows that you have a good connection inside the box, or shows you have a good connection in the box, I should say. Okay, and that's it. That completes the wiring for this fixture here. What you want to go ahead and do now is just take your wires, fold them all nice and neat, nice gentle bends. You don't want any sharp bends on any of these. Push them back inside the box. Okay, make sure you're not skinning any of them on the sides of the box as you're pushing them in. Do the same thing with your ground. Push that in there. And when all said and done, you want everything to look nice and neat inside that box. And then you're just going to push your door shut on it. Make sure nothing's pinched, and you're done. You're going to repeat that same procedure for all the lights that you're installing. Again, you're going to have a feed coming in from the source, and you're going to have a feed going out to the next light downstream. Again, your last fixture is only going to have the one wire supplying it. Gets hooked up the same way it did here, and instead of pushing 2 hots into each one of those connectors, or 2 neutrals, you only have 1 hot and 1 neutral. Alright, so all 4 lights are now wired and ready to be installed into the ceiling. Just to recap, there's the feed coming in from the switch, there's the feed going out, that comes into this fixture, goes out, comes into this fixture, again goes out, and comes into our last fixture here. And again, 1 line coming in, just feeding this, and that's the last line on the run, or the last light on the run. Alright, so again, I'm kind of at an awkward angle here to get this in camera view, but what you're going to be doing in your light here, you want to start with all these fingers into the box like that. So you want all 4 of them in there. Alright, what you're going to go ahead and do is first slip your junction box up through the hole. Alright, get it positioned in a way where it's not going to be hitting the joist. So again, our joists are running like this. So I'm going to shoot the box in parallel to those. Make sure your clips are all up. You're going to push this up into the hole here that you made. And now you're going to push these clips up and into the slots in the fixture. Okay, so to show you this a little better here, there is little holes in these clips. You can see this one right here. What you could do with those is take a flat-headed screwdriver, put it into that hole and then push up on it. And what that'll do is that'll push this clip in this slot more and lock it into the underside of the drywall here. Okay, so again, you're just going to put the screwdriver in that hole and push up, and it'll lock the can tight to the ceiling. Doing this one-handed here, so it's a little tough, but I'll try to show you. You're going to take this, push it up, and you can kind of hear it lock into place, and it'll suck this ring. You can see I don't have these two clips up yet, but it'll suck this ring tight up against the bottom of the drywall. So let me get these other two in now. Okay, so I went ahead and got all the fixtures installed on the ceiling, and I temporarily installed some CFL bulbs in them just to get some light in here. I still got to pick up the trim rings. Don't want to install them yet because I still have to fix the ceiling. As you can see here, I got those scraps installed in the original hole. Doesn't look too pretty, but that's all getting taped and mudded. You'll never see it. And here's the moment of truth. And it looks like everything's working, which it should. It's a pretty straightforward install. And I'm going to go ahead and get this ceiling put back up, and I'll tape and mud everything in here, and we'll come back and install the trim rings. Okay, so last step here in the process, we're going to install the trim rings. This is a 4-inch trim ring for the 4-inch housings that we installed. It's basically just a friction fit up in the ceiling against the light fixture with these clips on the side. I'll show you how to install those now. Okay guys, just a tip for you. You want to go ahead and make sure you paint your ceilings before you go ahead and install these. That way you don't have to cut in around the ring and worry about getting paint on these. You could roll right over the top of the can because all this gets covered once you have this installed. Like I said, these just slip up into place, these clips. No tools necessary. And that's it. Okay guys, went ahead and got the trim rings and bulbs installed now and all the other fixtures, and this job is officially complete. I hope you found the video helpful. You got any questions or comments, post them down below. I'll try to answer them all. And as always, thank you for watching.